Hey everybody, welcome back to the Tortured Man Mancast episode 10. Mock draft challenge. Lock it in, baby. We're ready to go. We're going to be talking football this entire time. We're going to do our mock draft. And the cool thing that we're doing this time around is we have a score. We're going to score it. We have our rules for scoring. I'm going to hand it over to Chad and he'll walk you through it.
That's right, folks. Thanks for joining us today for our draft spectacular, where we get to prognosticate, give you our mock. We're calling it Lock It In. It's the mock draft challenge. This is our opportunity to try to challenge all of the pros, the talking heads, those out there that get paid to do this stuff. Boy, wouldn't that be great? We've found out before that we are actually better at this than a lot of them, and we'd like to see if we can do that again, if we can make that magic happen once again. So we're here to try and do that with you folks today. And I'd like to give you a little info so you can follow along in case you want to do your own mock draft and see if maybe you can score it along with this. So I'm going to go ahead and share our scoring regimen here. What we're doing is score 1 point for every player that you predicted to be chosen in the first round. So if you got 15 players that made it into the first round chosen at any point in time, you get a point. Score 1 point if a team drafts the position you predicted. So, if you decide that the Bengals are going to draft a cornerback and they do, in fact, draft any cornerback, you get a point. Score 2 points if the player is chosen by the team you predicted. So if you know that Quentin Johnston is going to, the Bills, then you lock that up, you get 2 points. That's a freaking awesome thing. It's hard to get the right player to the right team. So well done if you do that. Score 2 points if the player is chosen at the draft number you predicted. If you can get draft number 1 or 2 right, that's going to be a big challenge right there. There's a lot of hubbub about who's going to go 1 or 2. And then lastly, you get 3 points if you get the right player, the right draft number, and the right team, which is the trifecta. Super hard to do. And if you're able to do that, oh man, by all means, kudos to you. So with that, we are going to jump over onto the NFL mock draft simulator. And that is a cool simulator we found that puts you on the clock and you get to be the GM for all the teams. We're not going to really be fussing with any of the trades that could be happening. It just gets all too wild at that point. So with that, I'm going to kick it over to Ed and let Ed get started.
All right. Well, I'm going to show everybody what I'm doing here. So, oops. I already forgot how to do this. That's how technically advanced I am at all of this stuff. Yeah, I got it.
No worries.
Okay. Did it pop up?
It's there.
All right. Well, so I'm drafting first, and my very first draft pick is going to be C.J. Stroud. I know there's been a lot of talk about Bryce Young, and I don't necessarily disagree that he is probably maybe the better quarterback. But this is one of the reasons. This is my reasoning for this. Frank Reich is now running that offense, and Frank Reich himself was obviously a very large NFL quarterback pocket passer in a very similar vein to what C.J. Stroud. He's built. He plays similar to Carson Wentz, which was also drafted by Frank Reich when he was in Philadelphia, and then of course when he went to Indianapolis. So I think that he just fits what Reich's offense does better than Bryce Young. And since it's almost a coin toss between the two, I think he'll go with what he's most familiar with.
Well, bold decision. You're not alone. Lots of other people think that that's a high possibility as well. But yeah, I'm actually going to go ahead and jump over to mine here and quickly show you that we are already departing because I am choosing Bryce Young. I think the Panthers are going to choose Bryce Young simply because he is the most talented QB in this entire draft, in my opinion. His play jumps off the screen. His arm talent jumps off the screen. He's just, I've some of the talent he has at arm, at the ability to just throw in all kinds of crazy angles and crossbody and not setting his feet and all kinds of wonky and unfundamentally sound ways. Just reminds me of like a miniature Patrick Mahomes with like way more speed. Now, I'm not typically going to bank on a smaller quarterback like that. And I'm not typically going to bank on someone who seems to be ready to run. But I actually don't think he is. I think that put him in an NFL situation and with the right coaching and with all the tape that we're seeing of these great, they can run guys, but they're looking to pass first, like my boy Mahomes. I think if you can get him in a situation like that where he's coached to pass first and run last, he's going to be a dynamo, regardless of his size. Russell Wilson is an inch taller. I know he's fallen off these days, but I mean his days at Seattle were phenomenal. I think their game is very, very similar. So we'll just leave it at that.
Okay, you get to strike again, my man, because you got first at second round at second pick.
Right on. So I'm going to, at this point now, jump back with you. And so, yeah, he may not be number one, but C.J. Stroud is definitely number two. I think Houston got themselves a really good quarterback, a quarterback of the future. I think this is going to make their fans super excited. I know there's a lot of hubbub about the fact that they aren't excited about a QB. And I just don't buy it. I feel like they really need a quarterback. I was kind of leaning towards something funky going on there, a trade or whatever, or them just taking, Jalen Carter or something like that. But I don't see it. You can't pass up on a good quarterback like this. And I think that it's just going to be too hard with a brand new coach to beat back the fan base when now 2 years in a row you're a terrible team.
To be fair, CJ, between Bryce Young and CJ too, we're talking about 1A and 1B, right? We're not talking about some great huge difference other than their size.
Right.
But you're not going to go wrong either way. That's why it's such a toss up. It's always one of those things when you have two players they both played big time college football. We're always both years as starters. They have almost exact same records and similar statistics. And I think that in your draft number two, if Bryce Young's not there for the Texans and they don't take C.J. Stroud, to me the only reason to do that is because they're going to trade back, and they're just going to get more picks. That would be the only reason.
Valid point. All right, brother. What do you want to do with the Cardinals here?
All right. Well, I'm not doing the Cardinals. I'm doing the Texans too.
Oh shoot, that's right. You get a chance to do the Texans.
Try to rush me along, man.
I mean, it's going to be Bryce Young, so
right. It is going to be Bryce Young. Absolutely, that's pretty obvious, right? So I am drafting Bryce Young, and the primary reason I love Bryce Young, and it's not that I don't think he's worthy of the very first pick in the draft, but his size for me is a consideration in the kind of offense that he's going to be in. I just don't think he's the best fit for Frank Wright's offense. And the Texans' offense with their, new coaching staff, is going to be very similarly based around a lot of the stuff that was that is now happening in the NFL, where you have a lot of moving pocket things going on as opposed to just straight drop back. And I just think he's a much better fit for what the Texans are going to try to do offensively, because he has the ability to move around constantly. He's very quick. He's got great feet. He's very fast. And he'll be able to keep plays alive for long periods of times, a la Pat Mahomes, right? Where the only thing that for the Texans that they're going to have to be very mindful of is how they coach their offensive line, because the reason that Pat Mahomes is so great at being able to stretch a play is because his offensive line is so disciplined, and they know he's back there holding on to the ball and moving around so they don't get downfield and get a penalty. And so they're going to have a lot of moving parts, but I think Bryce Young will do great with the Texans because until, Watson had his issues, I mean, they're similar styles of play to me, except Watson's just a bigger guy.
Fair enough. So, all right, now, would you like to talk to me about the Cardinals?
All right. Well, to me, for the Cardinals, this is a kind of a no-brainer. I'm going to go. Where'd my guy go? All right. Well, we will just do this. Go to Edge. I was not set up properly, but I am now. All right. So it's going to be Will Anderson.
Surprise.
Right. I mean, he's just the best pass rusher. They need one desperately. I like this guy. I watched him at Alabama. I live down here in Georgia. I see Alabama football all the time, and I don't have a choice because Ashley makes me watch it even if I don't want to. But this kid's feet are great. He is smart. He will not be outplayed. He's got a high motor. He works sideline to sideline. He doesn't just rush the passer. He's great at pretty much everything that an edge rusher / outside linebacker, defensive end can do for you. And he is going to be, I think, an amazing pro. I don't think there's going to be any issues with him at all. If I were to compare him to any player that is currently in the NFL, I would say Von Miller. He just reminds me of that style of really smart, heady, athletic football that somebody like Von Miller plays.
That's high praise. But yeah, definitely locking in Will Anderson at number 3 with the Cardinals. Moving on to number 4, to the Colts. I go ahead and pull up my board here. And we are going with quarterback Anthony Richardson out of Florida. I think the Colts need a quarterback desperately.
They certainly do.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I would not be surprised, nor do I think would you, if they manage to make a deal come draft night for Lamar Jackson or something like that.
Yeah, I can see that happening for sure.
So, this is just if they decide not to do that, then they'll definitely take a quarterback. And it's kind of for me, as far as what Indianapolis would do, it's a toss-up between Levis and Richardson, even though I actually think the Levis has more upside, believe it or not. But Richardson is what I think a lot of people assume has more upside, because he's just a freak of nature athletically. But, yeah, so my pick here, Richardson, and off we go.
All right. So this is going to be one of my little shockers that Chad and I were discussing, that we would both have little shocking things that the other guy wouldn't be prepared for, and here's one of mine. I am going with Will Levis. And the reason I'm going with him is because Peyton Manning, who has an enormous amount of pull with Irsay, the Colts owner, they're friends. And of course, Peyton played his career there. He loves this kid. He cannot stop saying a lot about him. This kid's... If you just look at him physically, this guy is a monster quarterback, man, with one of the strongest arms I've ever seen. I think he's going to be okay in the NFL. He's got some mechanic problems. He needs to set his feet better and those sorts of things, but I think all that can be worked around. But I think if the Colts are looking for somebody more to the Peyton Manning style of football, and he still has so much pull with that organization, I think they're listening, and I think that's where they're going to go, is with Will Levis.
Man, you're making me wish I had my pick back. It's a good one. I've done this 70,000 times, it seems like now, and Levis was here numerous times. And I finally talked myself into something different, but anyway.
Yeah, I had Richardson until my final mock draft, and that's when I finally made the change. And again, it's because Peyton will not stop talking this guy up. And that's, I'm telling you right now, for Jim Irsay or for their GM and their head coach, they're listening to Peyton. I know they are. If anybody knows what a great quarterback looks like, he'd be the guy. So I think they're going to do that. And this kid he's a little raw to me. He'd make bad decisions. He doesn't check down as well as I'd like to see, but those things can be straightened out.
Agreed.
But I just think he's got kind of prototypical, but still the biggest check mark for me was Peyton Manning wants this guy in Indy, and I think that's what's going to happen.
Well, do you agree that the Seahawks' biggest need is edge rusher? Or do you have something else in mind, sir?
Oh, well, I have is it my turn to go again?
Yep, it sure is. You're kicking off number 5 here.
Okay. Let's go back to the big board. All right. Well, I'll tell you. The guy I'm going with here, as soon as I can find him, I am going with Jalen Carter. Woo. And the reason I'm going with Jalen Carter is because this is a once every 5, 6, 7, 8 year kind of guy that comes along.
Blue chipper.
That is just so dominant that it's hard to imagine. I mean, this is the best way that for me to describe him. Everybody, meet a more athletic, faster, stronger Warren Sapp. That's what this kid is. He is a monster, man. He is going to start day one, and he is going to destroy shit. And he is I don't care who your running back is. You're not running around this guy. He's just a giant dude that is incredibly powerful. I love him. I loved watching him in college. I'm going to continue to love watching him now. And I don't think his off-field problems are way overblown. And for sure, Pete Carroll's, that guy has reformed a lot of players. That's not going to set him off even a little bit. So that's who I got going there. It's Jalen Carter.
I absolutely like that pick. I think that there's a strong chance that you nailed that one. I toyed with that. He's been in there on a few of my mocks because I'm just like, man, how does this guy fall out of the top 5? My only hesitation with it is that for me, the Seahawks their biggest need is edge. And so because of that, I go to my board here. I'm going with edge, and I'm actually going with Miles Murphy out of Clemson. That's the guy who is going to solidify that edge. They are in drastic need of it. They're getting old at so many positions on the defense, and this kid's a stud. I don't know where you have him on your list.
I don't.
You don't have Miles Murphy?
I got him going in the second round.
No shit.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think players like Luke Von Ness are better. I think Tyree Wilson is better.
I mean, I got Tyree right below him, out of Texas.
He's in my top 5. I just didn't get that many edge rushers in the first round. That's one of those guys that he's the kind of player if he drops to the second, if I'm correct, he's gonna play, all puns intended now, with an edge next year because he's gonna be pissed that he didn't get taken in the first round. So, and I love when players come into camp with a chip on their shoulder because they're like, screw you guys. You let me go to the second round. Now you're going to eat some shit.
So let me just talk real quick. 6'5", 270, runs a 4.5 40.
Yeah, frightening.
I mean, this dude's so fast.
Everything's there, but there's a couple other guys that are just better. Mildly. I mean, when we're talking about the top 3 to 5 guys at any position, it's It really just depends on who's the one viewing it and what their opinion, their own opinion from being involved in football your whole life, that you can look at and make your own value judgment. But it's really is it likely that he'll play as well or better than Wilson or Von Ness? Probably. You never know.
Fair
But
enough. This is
I
a
just
deep. This is a
Yeah.
deep draft for edge. It's really sweet.
And,
Yeah.
and an offensive tackle would be another one too, because I got a lot of those guys coming up as well.
Hell yeah. So.
All right, you're going. You go first again. You're on to the Lions.
Right on. So. Let me pull up my board. And the Lions are in need of wide receivers. With the latest news, they lost four or something wideouts because they got busted with gambling just in the past couple days. So I'm predicting that they need a wide receiver, and I'm looking over some of these guys that I think they could go for, and at this height, I think they're going to go for Jordan Addison. Quentin Johnson he's a pick that could go either way. A lot of people are really high on him because he's such a big guy. But I heard recently that he wasn't even invited to the draft for the first night. So I'm going to go ahead and drop with Jordan Addison here, which is actually a departure from what I had previously decided. But I'm doing it on the fly here, so I'm going to change myself up once again. And there we are. So what say you, sir?
All right. So for me, I am going to go at this pick with Devin Witherspoon, the cornerback out of Illinois. And here's why. The Lions traded Jeff Okudah to Atlanta last week. And he was by and far their best corner. And without him, their defense is too exposed. Detroit made a lot of great strides last year. Their offense was working really well last year. Jared Goff is playing much better than I had anticipated. And the Lions' defense was a little soft, particularly in the secondary. And if you're already losing Jeff Okudah to begin with, you got to get somebody back there because teams will just tear you apart. And then you get into who can outscore who. So they're going to need big-time help. And I think that they're going to go with the best corner on the board, which is Devin Witherspoon.
Man, I think you're pretty spot on. I don't think that's a bad point at all. They could definitely use some help. And I got Witherspoon at number 2 on my defensive backs. So we're not far apart on that. So I do actually have Joey Porter Jr. slightly above him out of Penn State. I know a lot of people would disagree with me. But
I got, Joey Porter. His old man was one hell of a Pro Bowl linebacker in the NFL, and I watched that kid at Penn State his whole career. He is an absolute stud. But I think he works better in a different defense because he's probably the best press coverage corner in the draft this year. And that's a guy that needs to be drafted by a team that plays very aggressively on the defensive side because he's going to be in your face.
Fair enough. Well, with that, on to...
I would go to the Raiders.
Yeah, the worst, shittiest team in the entire league, the Raiders. Sorry, I'm a Chiefs fan. What do you want?
Said the Chiefs fan.
And because they're the Raiders, and they are in the division with the Chiefs, they need something better than what they've got at QB. I know they got Jimmy G coming over for a little stint. Jimmy likes to roll in for a couple years and sleep with all the nice-looking ladies in town and then move on to another town. So they're going to need another QB coming up, and I'm taking Will Levis. I think that they're going to try to have him sit for a year behind Jimmy G and see if they can't make him the pro, the Las Vegas version of Pat Mahomes, because he does have the big arm. He does have that raw sort of talent that needed a little honing. I don't think he's Patrick Mahomes, don't get me wrong. But I do see some possible Josh Allen in him. Still may not be Josh Allen because that's rare air, bro.
Pretty sure
but he has that style. He has that feel about him. He needs some polishing, and it's whether or not he has the right attitude to take that polishing.
Right, and to be fair, the Raiders are one of those teams that always seem to draft the unexpected.
True.
So, and I would not be surprised by them doing that at all. And I think the kid has an enormous amount of talent. They got Jimmy G there, and Jimmy, by the way, is a good quarterback. He's just frail; he can't stay healthy, but he's really smart, and he'll be able to teach the kid up if they were to go in that direction.
Yep.
For me, I actually have the Raiders doing something very unusual. They're going to take an offensive tackle with Peter Skoronski. I think that he is the best tackle coming out of football. He was a 4-year starter. He has a lot of experience. He only gave up 2 sacks in his entire college career. He is an absolute beast. I know that he's a bit of yes. He's a bit of a T-Rex because they talk about his short arms, but I watched him play a lot of college football, and I didn't foresee that as a problem. And the Raiders absolutely have to protect Garoppolo, or their season will be total garbage, because that guy is just fragile. So that's why I am going here with, in my opinion, the best offensive tackle coming out of the NCAA this year, and the Raiders are going to do something smart for once and actually take a player that can immediately be plugged in and give them value.
I've definitely got Skoronski in my top 5 offensive linemen. He's number 4. So, short arms or not, dude's a stud. Totally understand why you would score him at the top.
Paris Johnson is the only other guy I had as quite as good as him.
Right on. But because on my board there's still this guy named Jalen Carter, obviously if you're the Falcons and Carter's at 8 still, you got to go with Jalen Carter. And they could definitely use him on the D-line there for sure. And what a freaking stud. You got to steal at 8, no doubt about it. If anybody who's watching this knows something about football and is watching this because they're interested in these players, I don't need to explain to you about Jalen Carter.
No explanation necessary. The guy, I mean, I picked him a few picks earlier, and I'm telling you, man, this guy is a faster, more athletic Warren Sapp. He's frightening, man.
He's special, man.
And I look, if he was there, I wouldn't blame them for taking him at all. But for me, I'm going to go here with an edge rusher, and I'm going with Tyree Wilson. And the reason that I chose an edge rusher with Atlanta is because here's a fun fact for you. The Falcons have been dead last in quarterback pressures over the last 2 years in the NFL, and it's destroying them. And Wilson is a freak of nature. He's 6'6", 275 pounds, and he's a freak. And they couldn't find a tackle in his entire career to even begin to slow him down. And he had 50 quarterback pressures last year in 12 games. That's over 4 quarterback pressures a game. And, of course, he turned 15 of those, I believe, into sacks. So he's an absolute high motor, the kind of guy that can come in and absolutely change everything for a defense, take pressure off the secondary. And you can't be dead last in quarterback pressures year after year and expect your team's going to get any better.
Fair enough. I like it.
But your pick, if he was available, yeah, you got to do that too, right?
Sure.
To me, I have Carter already off the board. Otherwise, I would have plugged him in there too.
Who do you got for number 9, Chicago?
All right, we're going to the Chicago Bears, and this is going to be another offensive tackle for me. And the offensive tackle I was just talking about a moment ago, and that is Mr. Paris Johnson. I think that Paris is just incredible. He played at Ohio State. He took care of the backside. C.J. Stroud. That's why he can be, and for my draft anyway, the number one pick in the draft. He's a huge need because Chicago needs to protect Justin Fields' backside, right? Justin is showing all the skills in the world except for he's running for his life, and he needs help. Paris is 6'6". He only gave up 14 quarterback pressures and 0 sacks in 2 years, the last 2 years at Ohio State. If that's not protecting somebody's backside, I don't know what is. He's giant. He's hard to move. I think he fit in with Chicago. And by the way, he also played with Justin Fields at Ohio State. So I think he's a perfect fit for the Bears. And the Bears desperately need a perennial top-end tackle. So to me, it's a perfect fit.
Yeah, he's a stud. Like you said, 6'6", 315, absolute monster. Runs like a 5 flat 40. Yeah, dude, totally get why you would take him there. For me, at Chicago here, let's get to my board. And I am going with something they desperately need.
Everything?
Christian Gonzalez, a cornerback.
Oh, that's not a bad pick either.
Yeah, they definitely need a corner. That kid is so good. Where do I have him on my DBs? He's at, he's down here like mix. I mean, it's funny because the top 3 DBs, Porter, Witherspoon, and Gonzalez, to me, they're all fairly interchangeable. Like,
yeah, I would agree. I would also include, because this is a good cornerback draft, I would also include Cam Smith in that as well.
I got Cam in my top 5. He's right there at the bottom of the top 5. So
you're not going to go wrong with any of those guys. You're not going to go wrong.
And the only reason I have a number 4 there that isn't. I'm sorry, number 3 on my list of DBs is a safety, and it's Brian Branch.
Yeah, Brian Branch is incredible. He reminds me of Kenny Easley.
Fair enough. So, all right. With
we
that,
are on to the Eagles.
Let's
Pick
see
number
what
10.
the Eagles. Let's see what the Eagles are doing here, Bubba. Go to the board.
What you got for the Eagles, bro?
I can tell you here quickly, the Eagles love their linemen, and they just gave a ton of money to their quarterback, so it would be very smart for them to beef up that O-line that's getting older. Paris Johnson Jr. going to the Eagles. That's a team he's going to be happy to join because, man, what a bunch of monsters on that O-line that are all, like I said, getting close to retiring and can show him the way. And he can take over for on the road to be a freaking dynasty.
Yeah, I mean, the Eagles are definitely in the NFC. They're obviously the cream, and not just because they went to the Super Bowl last year, but because of just how well they played as a unit. Last year, they're top down from ownership through the coaching staff. They are on point like Kansas City. I think the Eagles are really set for a long run in the NFC, and they're going to be fun to watch. This, in my opinion, this is not a bad pick. You're not going to go wrong with Paris Johnson. Obviously, I just took him one pick earlier for almost the exact same reasons. So,
right.
But for me, I am going to. Oh, I got to switch over to my draft board. For me, what I'm going to go with here is something that I noticed in the Super Bowl. I'm taking Luke Von Ness, and they're going to bring him in as an edge rusher, and this is my reasoning. Last year, when Philly was in the Super Bowl, they had trouble applying pressure on Pat Mahomes, who, by the way, had a very badly injured ankle to begin with. They did get to him once where they rolled it up, and he was even more severely injured in the second half. He ran all over on them. They weren't getting the kind of pressure that they would expect. So to me, this is just need meets opportunity to have somebody with this high a motor that can play this well. What he did at Iowa was amazing. He checks off all the boxes. And again, I'm basing this literally on their inability, particularly in the second half, Philadelphia last year. If they would have been able to put a lot more pressure on Mahomes, that Super Bowl would have probably turned out differently, and they just didn't. And let's face it, Pat was playing on one leg, and they still were having trouble getting that kind of pressure. So I think this is just need meets opportunity. So they're going to take the best edge rusher that other than Will Andrews, which to me is Luke Von Ness.
Yeah, he's in my top 5 for sure of edge rushers. He's number 5 for me, but he's right in there, and I understand all the arguments why he would be one of the top guys for sure. So, all right, well,
all right. So I go to pick again, and here we're going to go. The Titans need a lot of stuff, right? But I think that they're okay. I mean, obviously their running game is one of the best in the NFL, but they need a big, wide receiver. And I'm going with Quentin Johnson. He's 6'4", 215 pounds. He has the best vertical route receiver in this draft. And in his college career, he averaged 18.8 yards a catch, and he was a 3-year starter. That's a shocking number for somebody being a 3-year starter, almost 19 yards per catch for his entire career. He is a giant wide receiver in the mold of like a David Boston. Plus, his vertical leap is so good that his corners are going to have trouble even if he's covered. He's going to be able, like Megatron, he's going to be able to go up and get the ball whether they like it or not. And he's powerful, man. Right. Mm-hmm. And this is still a young man with a 21-year-old young man. You give him a couple years in the NFL, he'll be playing with the same speed and the same versatility and the same vertical leap, but he'll be 225, 230-pound wide receiver. Good luck with that.
Yeah, I mean, I've graded him as my top wide receiver in the entire draft. And I could be wrong. But that size is really spectacular, and I've seen the film. I mean, the guy makes some incredible catches too. So.
Oh yeah, and that's again when you're 6'4", and you have a 47-inch vertical leap. This makes you the most valuable receiver on your team when you're in the red zone. Who's going to outjump this guy for the ball? And that's why I use Megatron. He reminds me a lot of him in terms of Megatron was even taller.
Oh, yeah.
But, I mean, this guy is 215 pounds with 6% body fat. I mean, you're not going to hold him back. So if the ball's in the air, and he'll be the only guy that can actually get up there and get it. So, yeah, I think that it's just a solid pick for the Titans. I don't think that Tannehill's going to be there forever. But he's not a bad quarterback. He's just not a top, 10, 12 guy to me. But this will certainly make him look a whole lot better when he has a receiver that he can count on inside the red zone in the corners and just log the ball up to him. Let him make the catch.
Well, guess what, buddy? We're on the same page.
Oh, look at that! Finally, we get to 11 picks until we got. Will Anderson. We got Will Anderson. The same too.
We got that one the same, and then we got this one the same. So, I'm the same guy. Johnston, I think Tennessee's going to love this guy. He's going to help round out that receiver core. It's in need of some help. And, man, what a monster. My guess is by the time like Tannehill's moving on and they're moving in a new guy, this cat will be the dude. And whoever is coming in to fill that role, oh, man, like you're going to have a stud receiver on your hands for sure. So pretty fun.
Yeah. I mean, he's going to be a fun guy to watch moving forward. And it's mostly primarily just because you don't see many wide receivers at 6'4" with that kind of vertical leap and size and strength coming out of college football very often, especially recently, where undersized players at wide receiver seem to be becoming more the norm. Guys that are at that 5'10" to 6 foot with burning speed kind of thing going on. But when you're in the red zone, a 5'11" guy that weighs 185 pounds isn't going up and fighting for the ball as well as a guy like Quentin, right? Because he's just so big. So it'll be fun. It's going to be fun to watch in the NFL for sure.
Well, and speaking of receivers, go ahead and share my board once again. And let's talk about what the Texans are going to do. And who better to pair with C.J. Stroud than his old buddy from Ohio, Jackson Smith and Jigba. And I just think, man, what an obvious pairing. Now, I'm not the first person to come up with this. I've seen, other people come up with the same idea. But it just seems like if you're going to take on C.J. Stroud and you're going to try to put him to work right away, you might as well bring a familiar target to him, who's also an absolute stud, who I think everybody just about grades as a first-round wide receiver. And to me, it's just a common sense play at this point. So if you chose Stroud for the Texans at number 2, it makes sense to take Njigba.
I agree. Your logic and reasoning is perfect because you got two guys that have started with each other for a couple of years, won a lot of games together, know each other inside and out. I mean, it makes a lot of sense from your draft perspective, but not mine. Because I took Bryce Young at that position, and I think the Texans need to address their defense, and I think they're going to go with an edge rusher, and I think they're going to go with Nolan Smith. And the reason I chose Smith here is because he's not just a guy who's going to be play a down or two and then come back out of the game. This guy is an every down disruptive force. He rushes the passer. He stand out in the running game. He can cover tight ends and slot receivers, and he can play in nickel and dime packages, and he's super fast. He's got great recovery on all of these things, and I think that he just helps that defense out so much that'll take a defense that is good, and it gets missed a lot when we're talking about football, but a defense that can get a lot of pressure and have a player that is that versatile that can do a lot of things and keep the ball back over to their offense helps the offense. And when you have a young quarterback, and my draft scenario is Bryce Young, you don't want him to have to play catch-up football when your team's not all that good to begin with all the time. You want to at least try to keep him in the game, and having a disruptive force that can do a lot of things, create a lot of turnovers, and cover guys who otherwise burn you on third and, long and that kind of stuff, that really helps out a defense a lot. And I think that they're going to go in that direction because, one hand washes the other, and I just think that that's something that they can use immediately, more than a wide receiver from the way that I'm drafting this whole thing out.
Well, that's a valid argument, but my next question to you is, how are the Jets going to help lure in their next quarterback?
Well, now I wouldn't be surprised here.
With the number 13 pick.
The number 13 pick. I wouldn't be surprised if there's actually a trade here, and this is when Aaron Rodgers officially goes over. So that really wouldn't surprise me a lot. Because then Green Bay would pick a couple of spots again, right? They'd have, 2 draft picks within 4? I mean, what we got they would take the Jets, and then at 15, 2 picks later, they would have another pick. Mm-hmm. But I'm not going to deal with pretending that or trying to figure out trades that's too hit and miss. So at this particular place, the Jets actually were playing very, very, very good football. And I think if they get Aaron Rodgers, which I absolutely 100% believe is going to happen, that that team is loaded offensively and their defense is very good. So what do they need? Well, you got to protect the guy you're going to trade for or the Packers with, and Aaron Rodgers needs to be protected. And I think that protection is going to come from Darnell Wright. He is an absolute monster. Started all 4 years at Tennessee. He only allowed 8 quarterback pressures and 0 sacks last year. So I think Aaron will love him, and I think he'll take care of his backside. And I think it puts it'll make Aaron more comfortable when he knows he doesn't have to worry about looking over his shoulder all the time. Because offensively, I mean, the Jets are pretty loaded. They just didn't have a quarterback to execute their offense, and they only missed the playoffs by 1 game. Otherwise, if they would have had even just bad quarterback play, they would have made the playoffs last year, let alone if they end up with Aaron Rodgers. But if you're going to have Rodgers, you better protect him, and I think this is what they'll do.
Well, I definitely have Darnell Wright in my top 5 for linemen, but just ahead and still on my board is Peter Short Arms T-Rex Skoronski. And, yep, we have the same logic. You're going to have to protect your new franchise quarterback that you just broke the bank for. So it just makes sense that you add to that O-line and put some depth in there for sure. So easy peasy. All right.
We go on to the Patriots.
Let's do it. And in true Bill Belichick fashion, he wants to do the same thing. He wants to get himself an offensive tackle, and I think he does that in Broderick Jones from Georgia, stud of offensive tackle. I've got him graded at number 1 on my list, and I know there's some debate there, but I just think this guy's a stud, and I think that Bill Belichick, if anybody, and the Patriots will get the best out of the man. So,
well, I gotta say, I'm a little unsurprised by that pick because I have Broderick Jones as well. And here's
That's
why.
awesome.
Here is why. If you ever watch this kid play, which obviously you have, he is a bully. Like, his attitude is just mean. This dude is mean, right? Mm-hmm. And he is massive. He's 6'4", 315 pounds. And he's incredibly strong. But the thing when I see a tackle his size, his feet are incredibly quick.
He's fast.
He's so for his size, that dude runs like a 4.7 or something. It's just
4.9. It's sub 5 for a guy that big.
Right, for a guy that big. And it can't be overstated that this guy is just a mauler in the running game, man. He will crush you. But Mac Jones needs help because he was running for his life a lot last year and he got injured. So yeah, 100%. I think this is the right guy. And the reason, and another, other than all his attributes, the other big reason is this is a kind of player that Bill Belichick loves.
100%.
Absolutely will love this kid.
Right up his alley.
Yep. So 100. Yeah, we couldn't be more on a page there. And
nice.
When we pick the same things, it makes me happy because I think, well, that's probably a pick we actually going to get right.
There you go. That's kind of validating, right?
So now we are going to go right back over to Green Bay.
Green Bay.
And I think Green Bay, if you're going, they're going to have to. They need some help. And
they're going to make Aaron Rodgers so mad.
They really are. And I'm going with Jackson Smith Jigba. I think that he didn't play. See, I think that he may have gone closer to maybe even the first guy off the board as a wide receiver. But
a wide receiver for sure.
Right. But well, here's the thing. Here's the thing, though. One of the reasons that when you have a great quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, he gets more out of his receivers than a not so great quarterback, which is Love. He's just Jordan Love is not that good a quarterback, and he's going to need a lot more help than Aaron Rodgers would. Number one. And
they're decimated too. Like they have nobody.
Right. Jigba though, Smith Jigba is a fantastic player. So
Yes.
last year he was injured and he missed a lot of games.
Yes.
And he's fully healed. I mean, his combine numbers are stupid. But in 2021, he had 95 catches for 1,595 yards. He can stretch the field. He's a great route runner, and he's a fearless guy across the middle. He's just not intimidated. And I think that when you have a young a quarterback who's been sitting on the bench a long time, you got to do something to give him some confidence. And a guy, when he's in trouble, that he knows he can go to, that will go after the ball regardless of who's coming at him. That's the kind of guy you need. So I'm all in on Jigbo on this one. As a matter of fact, every draft, every thought about the draft, everything that in my whole process doing these mocks, this guy has always ended up at this exact spot.
Right on. So, well, I have similar ideas here. Not in Jigba because he's already gone on my board. However, I think they're going to take Jalen Hyatt. He's I think he's kind of an overrated wide receiver in this draft. But the reason why I think that Green Bay is going to take him is because he's the style of receiver that they like. He's super quick, super shifty. I mean, the guy's got mad talent. Don't get me wrong. I just feel like his speed it's so elite that it lets him get away with a lot of sloppiness. And unless he cares enough to clean that up, he never will. And that's why I feel like he's kind of overrated. But he is highly rated, and he has incredible natural talent. And if they can, coach him up, he'll be solid.
Well, I would actually say that Zay Flowers is the best pure separation wide receiver in this class. I mean, he is almost impossible to cover.
Here's a big problem you're going to have with it. I'm going to have with this draft board, Ed, is that I'm going to go ahead and reveal it. I'm predicting that the Chiefs get him, and because of the way the draft works, and we're not doing trades, I'm going to predict that Zay Flowers goes at 31 to the Chiefs. But I think that's because the Chiefs trade up to get Zay Flowers, and that's the best I could do. So Zay Flowers is a stud. That's the only reason I didn't just pick him, because I'm like, nope, Chiefs.
I wide receivers. There's quite a few good ones in this draft, and Green Bay's not going to go wrong with any wide receiver that they pick at the top of any board. But I mean, we're agreed. I mean, they have to go wide receiver. They have to help Jordan Love out, or he's the. I just don't think he's that good to begin with. I don't even understand why they drafted him 3 years ago. I couldn't even figure that out. So,
yeah, I was shocked, man. Totally shocked. So,
all right. So my old team is next on the board.
Yeah. Well, I guess since I finished it off on the last one, I kicked this one off, right? Or is that?
Yeah,
wrong?
Go ahead. It doesn't. Yeah, you're evens. I'm odds.
So, I think that your old team, the Cum-Handers, whatever they're going to be called in the future, man, they need some help in the defensive back room. They need some cornerbacks, and with Devin Witherspoon still on the board, I think that they decide to take him here and get some help on that back end. So what say you, brother?
Well, we are thinking very, very similar these last few picks. And I also am taking a quarterback for Washington. I'm just taking Christian Gonzalez because he ticks off every box that you need out of a great corner. He has size, speed. He's got great hips. He can't be shook back. He's got amazing ball hawking skills. He's smart. He's 6'2", 205. He's got 4.38 speed. He's a ball hawk. And the Redskins defense, the only thing, and they were a top 5 defense last year, and the only thing that if you're going to say that there's a weak spot in that defense, that weak spot is in fact their secondary. And you get a guy like that back there who can cover just about any wide receiver in the NFL and take a lot of pressure off of your offense. Not getting behind in games will help them a lot. I think especially now that Dan Snyder is gone and there is a new attitude in Washington, I think the Redskins are going to be a playoff team next year. And it starts by getting that secondary locked down and allowing the defensive line that they have built, which is probably the best in the NFL at this point, or at least one of them, to get after quarterbacks in a much better way and get a little more ferocious and make teams take and opposing quarterbacks take a little bit more of a pounding. I think that it just fits in well. Again, it is to fill a need. And I would have picked Witherspoon here if I didn't already had taken him a little earlier in the draft. And I had those guys like 1A, 1B, and 1C with Joey Porter. You know, I mean, you're never going to go wrong with any of these guys, Cam Smith included. There's a lot of good corners in this draft, man.
Fair enough, man. No arguments there. Well, who do you think Pittsburgh's taking at 17 then?
Well, there's only one guy the Pittsburgh Steelers they have no choice. They are taking Joey Porter Jr. They need some defensive help. I love Porter. I love him. He is the best press coverage corner in this draft, hands down. He's super physical. He matches up well against big body wide receivers, which is really important, especially in the division that Pittsburgh plays in. He's 6'2", 200. They'll put a little more weight and muscle on him. But here's something that is very frightening about this kid. In the entirety of last season, including the bowl game, 13 games, he gave up a total of 143 yards and no touchdowns. That is just, that's incredibly impressive. And his dad was Joey Porter Sr., one of the great linebackers in Pittsburgh history, and I just think he's a great fit here. And I think because of his physicality, he really works into that Mike Tomlin defense really, really well. It's exactly the kind of guy they like. And he is so good at press coverage. And you got big wide receivers in Cleveland and Cincinnati and in Baltimore. I think he's just a really good pick for them, and it's a need pick too. So it's a win-win for Pittsburgh if that's where they're at. That's if he's available in the real draft, because he could go earlier. It just depends on whose eyeballs are on it, you know?
I think it's a good pick. It's one that I've mocked in numerous times because he's close to home. And he's definitely like a Tomlin-style Pittsburgh guy. Like, he would be a big fit. And the only reason I didn't pick him in this regard, because he is still on my board, is because I'm choosing another local guy, the Pitt guy, Kalijah Kancey. And I think that's because they actually need more help on the D-line than anything. And I actually think that this guy, he's going to be somebody that they're familiar with. Like I said, close to home, absolute monster. And I think that he's going to be a day one starter, at least a rotational piece. By the end of the season, I think he'll be a starter. The guy's going to show out. Just watch. So he's a stud.
Oh, yeah. He's a great football player. Again, Pittsburgh's defense needs a little bit of help here and there. Both of those guys will fit into that style of play in Pittsburgh. I think with Joey Porter, his familiarity by literally growing up, while his dad played in that stadium and played in that organization, for him, it'll be like walking in, and it is like he's at home.
When you're freaking 281 pounds and you run a 4.6, you're a freaking beast, man.
You know, you and I are not very large guys, right? I'm 5'8", 175.
I don't run a 4.6.
Not in my bed. Look, one of the things when you're 5'8", 175 pounds and you're younger and you go, oh my God, this 6'6" fucking 280-pound guy wants to bash my head in. At least I can outrun him. No, you can't. You're dead. It's over.
Screwed.
So yeah, he's definitely a monster player. There's no two ways about that. I think defensive linemen, if we're going to include edge rushers there, I think that this draft has a lot of great players, man. I think people are acting like this is a disappointing draft, and it's only a disappointing draft from the quarterback kind of, everybody wants there to be 10 great quarterbacks to choose from and have all kinds of arguments about it. I don't think this is one of the better quarterback classes, but there's some good ones. But defensive line, corners, there are a lot of great players in this draft who are going to start immediately in the NFL. And just because they're not the kind of players everybody thinks about all the time, like offensive tackles, man, this is loaded with offensive tackles this year. You can't even have a good football team if you don't have a good offensive line, period. That's just the way that works.
Well, the next guy that's going to be a day one starter is going to be Brian Bracey, and he is a monster out of Clemson. They need a D lineman over in Detroit for sure, and he's my top rated interior D lineman in the whole draft. Super stud, and he's going to be a fascinating addition to that team for sure.
Yeah, I think Detroit is actually a pretty good football team, and but I think that one of the things that they were lacking in last year, however, was more on the offensive side. And here I think they're going to take the best running back, from my opinion, in the draft, which is Bijan Robinson. This guy has everything. He compares well for me to somebody like Saquon Barkley. He has size, power. He has an uncanny ability to feel pressure in defenders. He catches and blocks very well. He's got 4.4 speed. He's a day one starter and a game changer. And to take an offense that one of the only few glaring needs that they needed was a running back, and you have the opportunity to take a running back that could change your team like a Saquon or a McCaffrey, you got to take it. And I think that this will make Detroit's offense far more multifaceted. It'll take a lot of pressure off of their quarterback. And I think that this guy's rare enough for them to do this in the first round, because D tackles and edge rushers are going to be available, I think, in the second round. So there'll be good guys to choose from there. But running backs kind of trail off pretty quick. So I think they're just grab him now while they have the opportunity.
Fair enough, brother. So good arguments. Who do you got for
All right.
Tampa Bay, number 19?
Well, so for Tampa Bay, they need a quarterback. And they're going to take Florida boy, Anthony Richardson, because they can nurture him along. This guy is obviously, his physical attributes are what you would want in a starting NFL quarterback. He's raw. Don't get me wrong. He needs a lot of coaching up. His mechanics are a little messed up. His feet aren't always correct. But he studies the game, he works with his coaches, and he gets these few things straightened out. His potential is obviously through the roof. He's 6'4", 235 pounds. He's scary strong, and he's got a rocket for an arm. If they can coach him up and not force him to start right away, then this kid could probably develop into a really solid, great starting quarterback in the NFL. Now, again, you got to give him time to develop. And oftentimes we don't see that anymore. But if they allow him, because he only started last year at Florida. That was it. He's got 12 starts. So he needs to be seasoned a little bit more. But I think that's where they're going to go, because Brady is out and they're going to need a quarterback for the future. And Richardson's on the board, and I don't think they'll be able to let him pass by.
Right on, brother.
So that takes us directly. Nope, Tampa's you. What do you got? What you got for Tampa, bro?
I have at a corner, because they desperately need D-backs, and Joey Porter Jr. is too hard to pass up. So off we go from Penn State on down to Tampa. And that is that, sir. What do you have? Oh, wait. What do I have for the Seattle Seahawks?
Yes, sir. What are you looking at?
Oh, man. So it's hard for me. I've gone back and forth on this one so much because, man, I feel like they want to do a couple of different needs. They could definitely use another wide receiver. They've beefed up that defense with that edge. And, right now I'm really leaning towards a linebacker. I think they would like to beef up the defense even further. And so let me pull up the LBs. There's inside and outside the LBs. Oh, that's offensive line.
The interior offensive line, yeah.
Yeah, interior. So here we are. And I keep going back and forth with these guys, Drew Sanders and Jack Campbell. And I'm not – it's a tough one, but I'm going to go with Drew Sanders. That's what I originally said. Drew Sanders, linebacker out of Arkansas. It's going to Seattle. Lock it in.
I would have gone with Jack Campbell myself, but I think he's the better player. But
you might be right.
But it's definitely a need. And for me, I think that we're going interior offensive line in Seattle. The running game has been just garbage.
Real quick, not to screw you up, but so I don't forget, I actually think this is one of the ones that's going to get traded. I think that Seattle's going to trade this pick away. So
drop back, get more players.
Yeah. So anyway, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm going with Osiris Torrance here. The running game in Seattle was not as good as they generally. Pete Carroll loves to run the ball, and they weren't too good at it last year. They need to get better. It wasn't because their running backs are necessarily poor. It's because their offensive line was, particularly on the interior part of it. And Torrance is just a true guard. Started for 3 years. He's 6'5", 350 pounds. He's massive, and he has tremendous strength. And in the run game, that guy is, when it comes to run blocking, no one in this draft is anywhere close to this guy. He is a monster. And I think that takes a lot of quarterback off of Geno Smith, too. A lot of pressure comes off of that. When you have a running game and you don't have to do everything, changes the rules for you a little bit. And Pete Carroll loves offensive linemen, and I think he's going to take the biggest, baddest guard in the game at that position so he can get his running game back in gear so they can win a few more games this year and try to get themselves back into position of making the playoffs.
Okay, fair enough. Well, who do the Chargers out of Los Angeles take out at number 21?
Now, the Chargers, for me, the Chargers need a wide receiver. And I think they're going to go with Zay Flowers here. And the reason I'm going with Zay as opposed to Jordan Addison is because he's the best pure wide receiver in the draft. He started for 3 years. He has the best separation skills. DBs are not going to be able to cover him very well, especially in cross routes. If he route breaks, they're going to have to hold on to him or grab his shirt. Otherwise, they're never going to be able to keep up with him. Starts for 3 years, got 4.4 speed. Man, and his 10-yard split was 1.5 seconds, for God's sake. That's why nobody's going to be able to cover him crossing the middle. And I think he would be just a huge upgrade for Herbert, who is already a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. And I think he just fits in real well with their whole style of football.
All right, good points. I am going to go with a corner because they desperately need defensive backs, and Cam Smith, stud. So
Cam Smith is a stud.
Moving a little faster now since we're over an hour. So who do you? Oh, wait, my turn. Let's go to Baltimore. And I finally have our boy Bijan Français. Bijan Robinson. Bijan Robinson. Man, you were talking about people loving to run. Pete Carroll loving to run. If you don't think the Ravens love to run, yeah, he's going to be a great fit on that team. They're going to feed him the ball. And if they can keep Lamar Jackson around, they got OBJ going deep. That'd be a nice little fit for them. So,
yeah, I can't argue with that. For me, a guy like Bijan Robinson unless you already have Saquon Barkley or Travis Henry, or you're already 100% set at running back. You're not going to go wrong choosing him anywhere. Because he's a game changer. He is. That's why I had him taking a couple of picks earlier than you. He's the best running back in this draft, and I don't think that's even necessarily a close call. I mean, he's the guy. And so if you're going to take one, that would absolutely be the guy to take. For me, however, I think we're going to do is we're going to go pure need here for the Ravens, and they're going to go with Deonte Banks at corner. And the reason I chose Deonte Banks for this position is because he's the kind of athlete and corner that can cover anybody on the field. He's got 4.35 speed and a 42-inch vertical jump with an 11-foot 4-inch broad jump, for God's sake. He gave up 0 touchdowns in the last 2 years. But the only knock I have against this guy, with those incredible statistics in terms of giving up 0 touchdowns in the last 2 seasons, his only 2 starting seasons, because he's a junior. The only knock on him, and it's not even on him, it's just that his competition wasn't all that great because the ACC is terrible. And so I love his size, I love his speed, I love his strength, I love his intangibles. I think he deserves to be here. But the only reason I would have probably ranked him a little bit higher on my board had he been in like the SEC or the Big Ten and really had to cover like top quality guys all the time. But boy, the ACC is weak, right? Like Florida State and Miami are the cream of their crop, and Maryland. Those are the 3 best teams. And if Maryland, frankly, was in the SEC or the Big Ten, they would be shit. They wouldn't. They'd be a middle of the road team at best.
You're keeping him close to home, though, huh?
Yep.
So, what do you got then for the Vikings at 23?
The Minnesota Vikings. Well, I tell you what, Minnesota a couple of years ago lost their best wide receiver, who is now the best wide receiver in Buffalo. They have the kid that they drafted last year. One of the best wide receivers I've seen come out of college football in a long, long time. But if they really want to get to the next level, they need more help at wide receiver to take the pressure off of being able for your defense to just concentrate on one guy. Now, if you're going to concentrate over there, you're going to have to deal with Jordan Addison on the other side. I think he brings a lot to Minnesota. He won the Biletnikoff Award. He's a great route runner. He plays very well at all 3 levels for a wide receiver. And he can also play in the slot. And, I mean, he caught almost 159 passes for 2,500 yards and 25 touchdowns the last 2 years. So he's a super high production guy as well. So I think that he'll fit in with that offense real well. I don't have anything against Kirk Cousins, but if Kirk Cousins is ever going to get Minnesota, who last year they won more games than anybody in the NFC, right? And they died in the playoffs. And Kirk Cousins can't do these things by himself. He's not a guy like Pat Mahomes. Kirk Cousins needs help more than the top quarterbacks in the NFL. And this will really set them up so well that if they don't get further in the playoffs or even to a Super Bowl if they add somebody like Jordan Addison with all the talent they already have on offense, then Kirk's got to go.
All right. Well, I can't argue, man. I'm going to jump over here and give you my choice, and I think that they're going to pick an interior offensive lineman. Osiris.
Yeah, well, we both think that we got the same number 1 interior lineman on our boards. This guy's a monster.
He's a beast, and they need it, man. They definitely got to bolster that there in Minnesota for sure. So, well, I would like to then check out number 24 here. Tennessee is picking.
24
I'm sorry, not
is
Tennessee, but
Jags.
the Jacksonville Jaguars, I should say, is picking. However, the reason why I said Tennessee is because they're going to pick a offensive lineman out of Tennessee. They're going to take Darnell Wright, help protect Trevor Lawrence. They definitely need some interior line, or some pass blockers on that line. And I think Darnell Wright's going to be a really good addition to that team. So,
Well, I wish I could argue that point. I can't. I'm a Jags fan. I watch them. I go to their games because their stadium is 40 minutes from me. They are a fun team to watch. But here I'm going to go with Cam Smith. Their secondary was suspect all year last year. That secondary was absolutely destroyed by Pat Mahomes in the playoffs, man. There's a lot of good offensive tackles in this draft, as there are cornerbacks. I think they're going to take a corner here, and I think in the second round they'll take some interior or offensive linemen in general throughout the draft. But I think here they're going to grab Cam Smith. Smith is he's rated number 1 overall the last 3 years in college football in passes broken up. He also had 14 interceptions, 6 last year alone. 6'1", 190, 4.4 speed. He's got great press coverage skills, and he recovers incredibly well because he's fast. I think that helps their defense a lot, especially the linebacker that they picked out of Georgia last year, Trayvon Walker. That gives him just a half a second more added, because you can lock down receivers a little tighter and keep your quarterback needs just a fraction more time. It's just enough time for a guy like Walker to actually get the sack instead of just missing it all the time. And I think overall it helps the defense out. And I think Cam Smith is, again, we keep talking about these corners, but he could have gone as the first corner or the fourth on my board. It doesn't matter. They're all interchangeable in terms of just the skill level of these guys. Because they're playing against a lot more pro-style offenses now too. So press coverage is becoming more important in college football, and they do it well. They're being taught up well, and I think he'll help the Jags a lot.
right on, brother. Well, pick 25, New York. What do you
All
think
right.
the Giants are going to do?
I believe that the Giants here are going to go interior offensive line, and in particular, I think they're going to go with a center. They're going to go with Joe Tippmann. He is the best center coming out of the draft. He's strong. He's smart. He's big. He went to Wisconsin. Wisconsin is Big Ten, and their offensive linemen. I mean, hell, there's so many guys that come from Wisconsin and end up in the NFL. Big Ten linemen in particular are always kind of like that. This guy is a giant. He's 6'6", about 320 pounds. He is the highest graded center coming into the draft over the last 5 years. So, and the Giants need interior offensive line help, so it's a need for them, and they get one heck of a player that'll immediately start and immediately help them. So I think that's where they're going to go.
Well, anytime you add to the line, you're doing yourself a service, especially on the offense there. But I will say I think they are going to get a target for Danny Dimes, and I think it's going to be Michael Mayer, tight end out of Notre Dame. I think that he's a heck of a pass catcher. Can be another really good solid target for them. Tight ends take usually a couple of years to really develop, but I think he'll actually start showing off a little bit in this season to come. So
yeah, I mean he's fantastic. He played at Notre Dame. He's very good. He's definitely got the maturity and the skill level to jump in and play right away. I don't think that you can ever underestimate what a good tight end can do, especially a Chiefs fan knows exactly what a great tight end can do. So I think that's I can't argue with you there. So where do you see the Cowboys going?
Well, the number 26 pick with the Cowboys, to me, is a sort of like typical Cowboys style pick. And that's going to be they're going to overreach, in my opinion, slightly for a running back. And it's going to be Gibbs out of Alabama. Dude's a stud. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to sell him short. I just think they have a lot of other needs. But they just seem to love their running backs in Dallas. And I think that's where Jerry's going. So.
All right. Well, I can't argue with that at all. Jerry Jones is kind of an oddball with a lot of this stuff, right? Kind of never know what he's going to do. But I have to say that I wouldn't be surprised them going that way. I actually have them taking a tight end. I think that they're going to take Dalton Kincaid. I think that he's probably the best tight end in this draft, in my opinion. I have him. He'll immediately improve Tony Romo or Dak Prescott because it'll give him a safety valve to be able to go to. He'll take that pressure off. He plays kind of like a Jason Witten to me. The Buffalo Bills, they are the next in rotation, and I get to make my pick first here. And I'm going to go with a linebacker here for the Bills. I do believe that the Bills could use some offensive help, but I think that they could use some defensive help, particularly at linebacker. And I think they're going to go with Dayan Henley. He's the best sideline-to-sideline linebacker that I've seen in this draft. He's fast. He's fluid. He has great tackling technique. And all of last year, the entire year, he missed 5 tackles in 13 games. That's it. This kid is bank. He'll start. He'll give that defense a better, higher motor. And I think that there'll be wide receivers available to them in the next round. And because I do believe that they're going to need somebody to help stretch the field with more than what they have currently. Diggs can't do everything on his own, and I wouldn't be surprised that Buffalo is already probably in trade talks maybe for some players that are one out of Arizona and may be going to Buffalo to begin with, and if that's the case, they wouldn't need to take a wide receiver here anyway. So I think they're going to go linebacker.
Well, I think unfortunate for myself as a AFC guy, Buffalo's about to get a lot stronger with the addition of tight end Darnell Washington out of Georgia. This guy, he's an absolute monster. 6'7", 265, runs a 4.6 40. Just insane, like just freakish, like cat-like skit, like the way he moves for as big as this man is. It's like a basketball player kind of out there, playing that receiver position. And I think that's going to be a wonderful addition for Josh Allen. Just a nice little sort of safety blanket for him going forward. So, all right.
Well, that goes to Cincinnati.
Let's talk about what the Bengals are doing. And I've got the Bengals looking for some help on the back end to stop old Patrick Mahomes. And I don't see too many people arguing with that need. Deontay Banks, help lock it down. I think that's a good pick for the Bengals.
I think that we're thinking similarly here for Cincinnati. I also have them going with a defensive back, but I think they are going to go with the best safety and coming out of college in quite a few years, in my opinion. I think Brian Branch is just an incredible talent. He will make that secondary a whole lot better. He'll start from day one. He's graded as the top tackling defensive back in all of football, including corners in college football. He only missed 4 tackles in 224 attempts. He's 6 foot, 200 pounds, hits like a truck. He reminds me of Kenny Easley. He's just mean, fast, strong. He can even come up and play a small linebacker role if need to as well. I think Cincinnati needs the secondary help. If you went corner, I'm just going Branch here just because of his overall skill level. But yeah, they need a little help back there if they really want to be able to compete with the Chiefs, because right now you got to say the Bengals and the Chiefs are Chiefs first, Bengals second. I think they're the top 2, unless Josh Allen gets some help. He needs more than just Diggs to go to. But the AFC's so loaded, period. Good Lord. The rich get richer, and Cincinnati's going to get a little richer here.
True story. Well, New Orleans at 29. What do you got, boss?
So I got the Saints, and with the Saints, I am going with a linebacker, and I am going with the guy that you were struggling over with Drew Sanders, and I am going with Jack Campbell. He's an every down linebacker. He's got great size and strength, his feet, but he's really smart, which I like. You're not going to confuse him out on the ball field. He's a 3-year starter. He'll transition without much effort at all. But he's also the prototypical NFL linebacker. The kid is huge. He's an interior linebacker, but he's 6'5", 250 pounds, man. And he's got great sideline to sideline speed. He's definitely a very frightening person to have in the middle of the field, running monster for you and locking everything down and keeping the center of that field a place that no wide receiver or running back wants to go.
Well, that is fair enough. As for me, for the Saints, I'm going with an edge rusher that they desperately need. And at edge, I am saying Luke Van Ness is coming over from Iowa to shore up that defensive line and to put that pass rush together. So, all right. Moving on, because we're getting close to the end here. Let's go to number 30 with the Eagles. And drop over here to my board.
Who you got going to Philly?
Well, this could be a controversial take, but I think they take a safe play. Defensive lineman, I think they're going to beef up both sides of that line. Offensive tackle, defensive tackle, and they dropped themselves in a bad one too. A nitty-gritty, dirty mofo in Smith out of Michigan. He's going to come in right away. I think Mazzy, however you say it, he's going to be a good addition right away. Man, they're getting old and they're getting banged up, man. They're playing some long seasons, and they're going to keep playing them too. So they need that addition for sure.
So with Philly, I mean, their interior defensive line is probably the best in the NFL.
Solid.
They're terrific. So I would think for Philadelphia, I have them taking Antonio Johnson, safety out of Texas A&M. He's fast. He's aggressive. He has awesome ability to recover. He plays slot coverage like a corner, and he's a fierce tackler. I think he's going to upgrade Philadelphia immediately. You need to drop your screen, bro.
No fault.
So that's why I'm going with him. I think that Philly is really so strong. They don't have a whole lot of things to be concerned about. I think if defensive-wise, their secondary needs a little bit of help, not a whole lot of help. But this kid's great, and I think he could start day one. And even if he can't even quite break into that pretty good starting lineup to begin with, and nickel and dime packages, he's going to be there for all of that. So I just think he suits one of the very, very few needs that Philadelphia actually has. So I'm going to go with that. And then your beloved Chiefs. The last
Just real quick
pick.
about the Eagles, man. They got some guys like Fletcher Cox,
Yes.
1 year deal. They got other vets on very minimum deals. Like they've got. I just think that they're going to need to have some turnover there, and that's the reason why I went that route.
Oh no, and
So-
I'm not even arguing with it.
Fair enough.
But I think that these guys will be available in the second round as well. I think safeties are a little more of a premium than corners and defensive linemen this year. That's all. Sometimes when I make a pick, it's availability of good players that you actually need, and if they're available at the time, you just take them because they're there because they fill a need. You're right. Philly's going to have to deal with all that stuff, as all good teams have to do. Your guys are going to have to deal with that this year because of Frank Clark, right? I mean, it's just kind of what happens in the NFL. So for me
True
in Kansas
story.
City, so
you're gonna choose an edge, huh?
I am not actually going to choose an edge.
Oh shit!
I am not. I am going with Anton Harrison, and it's because the Chiefs lost their best offensive tackle. Harrison is amazing. He's got great feet and great balance. He's powerful. He's got really fast hands, which I like on a tackle because you can fight off the defender better. He's a 3-year starter for Oklahoma, and in his career, he only gave up 9 quarterback pressures on 447 pass attempts. 9.
So
that's credible.
I can't argue with you.
And I think he'll jump in and start right away.
If the Chiefs, and I'll spend just that extra second on these guys because it's my team. If the Chiefs do not move up and they stand pat, then every time I've mocked it, they'll end up with this cat, with Harrison. And like you said, they lost Orlando Brown Jr. They could use some help. Definitely could use some depth there. They've done some things to shore that up, but it's still not quite enough. But
And you got to protect your guy, right? Pat is the Kansas City Chiefs.
True. But I think they can get similar, at least close to similar offensive line help in the next round. And for me, what I'm hoping for is that the Chiefs move up in the draft because I think it will be required that they do so if they get the player that I am choosing, and that is Zay Flowers. I think Zay Flowers would be a phenomenal addition to the Kansas City Chiefs wide receiver core. I think Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, they're all they're going to be licking their chops with this cat. I know we have other needs. I know we need an edge rusher. I know we need more offensive linemen, but I feel if they can move up and get Zay Flowers, they need more depth at wide receiver. They just do. They've got some playmakers. Kadarius Toney's phenomenal. MVS is pretty damn good. I mean, you've got some dogs. Sky Moore's going to get better. He was a rookie last year. He's going to get better. But these guys a lot of these guys have shown a penchant for injuries, especially Tony. And we got rid of Juju. We got rid of McCall Hardman over the offseason. We're going to need to bring somebody in. We need a dog. And vets are too expensive. So this is my bet. My bet, Zay Flowers. We're going to figure out how to trade up. Probably trade up to number 20 and take that second pick from the Seahawks. That's my guess. And take Zay Flowers right there. That's my guess. My bet.
It's out. You got a good argument. They did lose a lot. I think with Pat, however, they lose Tyreek Hill and they look even better, right? I mean, this guy makes everybody around him play better. But if he's face down, getting slammed by the defense because there's nobody protecting his backside, then he's no help at all. But you never know what's going to happen in draft, and we don't even know what's in Andy's head. He may already have a plan involved. So you never know. I would go to protect Pat first, but we'll see. That's why this is so much fun.
Yeah, I just think there's some guys a little bit later in the draft that are decent.
Well, there is, because offensive linemen, tackles in particular, it's a pretty deep draft. I would agree that. But their next pick is what number?
Well, see, and now I think that's gonna change because, again, my theory is they're gonna move up, and they're gonna have to give some other picks away, and they're gonna get some other picks back, and I think they'll probably try to get a little bit closer to the front end of the second round then with all of that mumbo jumbo. I'm not sure how they'll pull it off, but they would definitely want to either go edge or offensive tackle at that point. But
Yeah, it just doesn't sound like Andy. To me, but what the hell do
you
I
mean
know?
to move up for a wide receiver?
Yeah, their next pick is 61. Mm-hmm. That's pretty far back. So that, yeah, well, it's obviously it's at the end of the second round as well. I mean, they're the Super Bowl champions, so you don't get great numbers and when it comes to drafting. But do I think offensive tackles will still be available at 61? Yeah, I do.
Let it be known I've given myself a couple options here because, I chose an offensive tackle for them.
Well, in the second round,
many a mocks, but I'm saying if Zay Flowers is available, they're taking Zay Flowers if they can get him.
To me, first round, and what teams generally when they're drafting in the first round, because it's a first round draft pick, you're assuming this person is starting for us immediately and what you're going to get out of them and how they help your team. After that, I think a lot of teams just start going need. They need a tackle, but they also need a wide receiver. If they can end up with a blue chip wide receiver out of this draft, I don't think at 61 that you're going to be starving for good tackles that are coming out of college football this year either. So I can see your point. I get it. Kansas City is, fortunately for fans, you in particular in this conversation, the best thing for them, of course, is that you don't win Super Bowls and win 5 AFC championships or 4 of the last 5 because you're don't have talent. Even when your talent seems to leave, the talent left behind is almost just as good. That's how great organizations work. And I think they're going to go with an offensive tackle. But again, I'm basing everything on nobody trading things either. And the reason for that is because that would just make this draft entirely too complicated to do.
Yeah, once you start getting into all that, it's like I saw recently a video of Peter Schrager doing his mock, and he's got the Colts trading up with the number 2 spot from the Texans. And I'm thinking, why would the Texans trade with the Colts? I can't imagine why they would do that. But
so they're in the same
division.
Conference and of course and division.
Yeah.
So not only is that unusual, it's unheard of. Why would they want to help somebody that have to play twice a year and fight for their division and give them a leg up on the most important piece of the puzzle, which is the quarterback? That's never going to happen. That's just.
I just can't see.
But to be fair,
that would throw everything into an uproar.
To be fair with a lot of these guys, though, when you do 500 mock drafts, you just start doing silly crap too because you're bored. I actually like the simulator that we were using, that Sports Keto one, which is not a bad one for people out there who like to mess around with this kind of stuff.
Right.
But even if you allow the simulator just to do every pick on its own, after a while, like I saw one, I was going through it, and it was like a 4-team trade. It's like, what? It's because it just gets silly after a while because it's just trying to compile all these things that could possibly happen. And in reality, what's going to happen is generally teams that are desperate or teams that only need a piece of the puzzle can become desperate and give away a lot to move up to get what they're after. I think we're going to see a lot of trades because there are teams that, when you're short on quarterbacks, you never quite know what's going to happen, right? There are, to me, 3 guys that are really worth all the fanfare of a first round draft pick. And if the NFL wasn't so quarterback needy all the time, I'm not even sure that this would be a draft where quarterbacks would even be going 1 and 2. That just seems to be the norm now with the NFL, that it's always quarterbacks in the first couple of picks. But I think, guys like, Will Anderson are just better and are going to play, and not only play well, but play at a Pro Bowl level for the next dozen years. The chances that any of these quarterbacks are actually really good is pretty slim. That's just generally the way it goes.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be some reaching for sure on these on these QBs, especially outside of the top 2. But
I think teams that overreach, because I look as a Skins fan all those years. I watched that team overreach for quarterbacks a lot, and that rarely ever pans out. And the one time that it did, which was RG3, they destroyed his knee in his rookie season, and he was never the same guy again. So even when they finally got a franchise quarterback, they destroyed him in less than 16 games.
Right. Well, maybe with a new ownership and all that, they can do a little better, take a little better care of their people.
Well, I hope they're smart in this draft and see if Sam Howell works out before they go crazy and think that they have to. By the way, I think next year's quarterback draft class is going to be much better than this year's. So, if they suck again this year, then maybe they'll have an opportunity next year. I hope things work out for that, for the franchise. It's a long, proud franchise that Dan Snyder literally destroyed. And I hope they can get back on the right track and do it fast. I think they're smart if they keep their coach, because Rivera's, considering what that guy has been through with all the scandals that came down that he couldn't have foreseen when he took the job, particularly with Snyder, particularly with all the sexual crap. That guy has held that football team together that was just dying to explode right in his face. And he kept that whole thing together. They made the playoffs and won their division in one season, and they missed the playoffs last year by 1 game. Through all that crap, he's earned the right to stay there if they can make the playoffs next year.
Right on, brother. So, well, I guess with that, let's talk briefly about what we're going to do next week. We'll, of course, the draft's going to happen on Thursday,
correct?
Friday, Saturday, and then on Sunday we'll be meeting again, and we can talk about how we did.
We can score it out.
Score it out. Yeah.
And we're going to pick a handful of the pros, guys that everybody knows, like Todd McShay, Mel Kiper, the guy from Fox, the bald-headed dude, Glazer.
Jay Glazer.
Yeah. Maybe we'll choose him. Maybe Zimmerman from Sports Illustrated. He's usually pretty good at this kind of stuff, better than most.
Right.
So he might be a fun guy to
Traeger.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll get like 5-6 guys, and then we'll put ourselves against them, and we're using the point system that we provided at the beginning of this, and we'll see how we all rank out at the end of it. It should be very interesting. It'll be a lot of fun, and I'm hoping beyond all hope that we can go nana boo boo. We're better than you on Sunday, because that'll be a whole lot of fun. Because we like to toot our own horns, right? So.
Yeah, for sure. And then also be looking forward to a draft grade. I know I'm at least going to grade out the Chiefs for their overall draft experience, the draft, grade. So I'll give them a solid grade on all the rounds. And I don't know if Ed's going to try and do that with the Jaguars, but Commanders. Or
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I could just have every team graded out for next Sunday. I don't even care, right? It's one of those things, because grading out a draft after the draft just happened doesn't mean anything. These players need to be in the NFL. I'd rather grade last year's draft and see how everybody did after a year. Actually, if you really want to grade a draft, it should be 3 years.
It's a fun prediction.
Well,
though, so
right. And then you can go back and revisit it
3 years from now. Yeah, at least 2 years.
And by then we'll have 20 million followers who will really be into it.
Exactly. That's the whole point. So we should set ourselves up for that.
That's right. Absolutely.
For all those 20 million who are going to be following in the future, this is for you guys.
Yeah, and we will grade ourselves in 3 years because we're going to be here. Even if we only have 100 followers or whatever, we'll still be here in 3 years because we're brothers and we like doing this shit.
We're not doing this for you. We're
That's
doing
right.
this
We're doing it for us.
All right.
So
All
that
right,
was
brother.
a lot of fun.
Hell yeah.
I'm very excited for next week. Especially Thursday because as soon as that draft's over, I'll be scoring it as it goes along. I'm going to be all about it. And I'm going to be very excited to see how everything comes out. I will say my prediction is we're going to be right in there with them no matter what. Even if somebody wins and we don't, it's not like, say the top guy scores 50 points. It's not like we're going to score 20. If 50 wins it and how we're grading it out, we'll be 44, 45. It's not going to be this like crazy ass whooping. That's my prediction.
True story. So.
And if we totally shit the bed, we'll find somebody to blame it on. I'm not even worried about it.
It won't be my fault. So.
All right, man.
Right. Well, with that, thanks for tuning in, folks. And we're going to catch you next week, and we'll dial it all in, see what it all comes out to be. So, all right, folks, have a good evening. Take care, and we'll see you next time around. Peace.